I'll be presenting my 8-minute seminar on climate change and some of the unknown detrimental effects it has on us and on the earth. So the reason I chose this topic is because throughout the years in my science classes in elementary school and middle school and now high school, I always would pay attention the most whenever we would talk about environmental things or climate change related topics in science classes or in social studies classes more than anything else. And I always would retain the information more than the other types of information for some reason. So I just always have found it to be the most interesting type of information, I guess you could say. So the first topic that I'm talking about is the moon. So the moon is actually separating from Earth right now. It's getting farther and farther away. And that's a natural process called entropy. Entropy is Latin for chaos. It's just simply the constant expansion of the universe is what entropy is defined as. However, due to man-made climate change, man-made greenhouse gas emissions, which creates climate change, the moon is actually getting farther away from Earth at a faster rate, at an alarming rate, actually, than it would be naturally if it weren't for climate change. How is that possible? Well, it comes down to the different atmospheres of Earth. So, obviously, like the stratosphere, that is where weather happens, and that is being affected by climate change, of course. And like, for example, the mesosphere, that's the last layer of Earth, and that's the first layer of security on Earth, if you will, in the atmosphere, because when, like, for example, a meteorite comes through the atmosphere, it's the mesosphere that burns it up. And then, like, there's the troposphere, but the ionosphere, that's the most important one for what we're talking about right now, because the ionosphere is where the electrons, the protons, the neutrons, and the sotrons are. So the electrons that's obviously a negative charge, proton positive, neutron neutral, and sotron is actually negative positive. But that's where those different ions are harbored, and that's actually what causes Earth's geomagnetic field. So your compass would not work without the mesosphere. Birds wouldn't know where to fly during migration season without the mesosphere. I keep saying mesosphere, I'm sorry, ionosphere. That's your compass wouldn't work without the ionosphere. Birds wouldn't know what to do without the ionosphere. But that's why it's imperative that we have it. But even more imperative than, some silly birds or our compasses working is the ionosphere is very important for Earth staying in its orbit around the sun, Earth staying on its axis, so our days continue, and our years continue, and our months continue, and our seasons continue, and the moon staying in orbit around Earth. It's actually really interesting. Like, for example, in California, a lot of the places have, like, areas where the car navigation doesn't work, and the reason for that is because car navigation relies on satellites and geomagnetic fields instead of cellular data, which is why people tend to think that car navigation is more reliable. It's not, but people think it is because of that. But like in California, a lot of the time the car navigations will just stop working, especially in Southern California, because there's such a big hole in the ionosphere that it can't get a proper reading of the magnetic, energies, the pulses, because it's such a weak signal coming from the burnt up ionosphere. So, but the more important thing about the ionosphere over everything else is that the ionosphere is what keeps the moon in orbit and what keeps everything in orbit, right? So without the moon, though, what happens? Well, without the moon, a lot of things would happen, but I'm going to focus on the ocean aspect of it. So without the moon, the waves would get smaller and then become non-existent. Why does that matter? Well, it doesn't just matter to me. It doesn't just matter to like people who surf or swim or whatever. The reason it's a big deal is because without the waves, the ocean becomes stagnant. So I'll explain. So Hawaii, specifically Kauai, focusing in on that, according to U.S. News and World Reports, which is kind of a strange thing to be given for this project, but that's what the school gave me. So according to U.S. News and World Reports, the waves in Kauai have been getting smaller. The waves all over the world have been getting smaller. The waves back in 2001 were on average 3 feet tall, and during monsoon season, obviously not during a monsoon, but in monsoon season in Hawaii, Kauai, the waves were on average 3 feet tall. But after 20 years, so 2021, the waves are now actually around 1.5 to 2 feet on average instead of 3 feet. So it's almost about half as small as the waves used to be in just a matter of 20 years, which is a big change for 20 years. Because if we continued on that path, 20 more years and the waves would be gone. But also remember, pollution's only getting worse, not better. So really, it's less than 20 years if we continue on the path that we're going right now. Right, that's a big deal. What happens if also the tides normally go in and out every day, but within the last 50 years, instead of every day, it's become like 2 days, 3 days, and a lot of places, actually, tides will last like 4 to 5 days. So why is any of this important to you or to anyone? Well, if there's no waves, the ocean becomes stagnant. Stagnant means there's no life. Everything is straight, smooth, but nothing's moving. It's just still. But what that means really is actually a lot of the carbon comes that we pollute and that plants pollute too. A lot of the carbon actually goes into the ocean and then is recycled up by the organisms that live down there and the plants that live down there, and they send up oxygen, which is what we breathe in, right? So without waves, the air would actually not circulate down to the bottom of the ocean, and every organism down there would die, actually within a few minutes, as soon as the waves stop. And once the waves stop and everything dies down there, everything on the Earth's surface will die too, like within a few minutes, because without all of that air, we'll run out of air, we'll suffocate. And even if you did find, let's say, an air suit or something, you would still die because everything else would die. All of the other plants and animals would die, you would have no food. So without the ocean, the Earth would end pretty fast. So that's an unfortunate thing that we need to work on and worry about. Scary enough, the NASA, they say that, they have no idea what the moon is like right now, like if it's going to, how much faster it's going to accelerate from separating from us, because they don't have a way to measure that right now. But they said that honestly, it could like separate from Earth tomorrow. It could just be gone. We could wake up and the moon's gone, or we wouldn't wake up because we would die in our sleep. But we could wake up and the moon would be gone, and we wouldn't know the wiser, right? So they don't know. They don't know. Or it could be 50 years. But it's scary because they have no idea. But what they do know is that the moon is going to separate from the Earth if we continue doing what we were doing. So we have to change our ways, or else... Don't know what to tell you. Bye-bye moon, bye-bye us, right? All right, so the other thing that I was going to talk about is just a little bit quicker. There's actually more people that die each year from climate change related things or from pollution than there is basically anything else in modern history. So, like for example, cancer, car wrecks, none of those cause more deaths each year worldwide than does any kind of climate related illness or pollution, according to U.S. News and World Report statistics. So it's a pretty big deal. And the thing is, You know, the politicians, for example, who don't care about the environment, you know, ethically then you should be caring about the environment because people are dying, right? So even if you don't care about the environment, you should be caring and passing laws about the environment because people are dying too. So, like, so what can you do to help? You know, because obviously if you don't work for NASA, you know, well, you know, recycle. And here's what's sad. DeKalb County, for example, and actually Fulton, Cobb, Gwinnett, Taliaferro, Rockdale, a lot of counties in Georgia have already gotten in trouble for this, but DeKalb got sued for it. DeKalb was actually selling the recyclables that people would put in the recycling bin. They would take it and say they're giving it to the recycling center, but they would actually sell those recyclables to a trash dump because they made money off of it. And the trash dump wanted to fill their stuff up because trash dumps get federal funding for having more trash. But recycling centers don't get any federal funding, ever. Where's the logic in that? So, yeah, it's a grim world, but there's, you know, it's a grim world, but there's definitely solutions. So, just, you gotta stay hopeful. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you, Ms. Osmerg, for a great year, and I enjoyed having you 2 years in a row. Sorry for going a little over 10 minutes, but you stipulated that you wanted it to be at least 10 minutes, but you could go over, just not under, so I went a little bit over. But anyways, yeah, thank you for having me in your class. I have fun, and I enjoyed having you twice, and I hope I will see you soon. And I look forward to seeing you next semester.